Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WHAM, John Sneisen. And the banking and governmental system is attempting to once again save themselves with asset freezes, and we'll go further into also civil asset forfeiture, which is being capitalized under Trump soon. But first, John, as his article mentions from Reuters, EU explores account freezes to prevent runs at failing banks. And of course, we can't expect anything different. The European Union, the banking system, the governments around the world are doing whatever they can to protect the banks from the populace when people lose all their money. Because if your money's in the bank, it's not yours, it's the bank's. And especially considering the bail-in regimes that have been pushed in many countries around the world, this is getting incredibly dangerous and incredibly close to that end game that we've been warning about for so long. So, John, can you go into this?
Yeah, well, first of all, this comes out of what happened in 2008. A lot of these ideas, where you have from the United States, it's called the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, and it was in 2008 where they pushed through. And some of the things that they discussed in the act was asset freezes on the banks and so on. And actually, they've gone further. If you read Jim Rickards' book, new book, The Road to Ruin, he actually was talking to heads of BlackRock and other big funds, which is outside of the banking system. They actually have been sitting down with the U.S. government and the central bank, of course, in order to freeze assets in funds as well, in money market funds. So this is very dangerous to have your money in any type of funds now in the banking system, wherever it is. Actually, having any money in any US dollars, Canadian dollars, whatever currency it is, because what these guys are looking for, they're looking for a way to stop a big bank run, because that's the number one thing. You got to understand, the banks doesn't have not even close to any money or what they actually are supposed to have for you. They just have a little bit of an amount in that bank to cover you everyday activity, taking out and in some money, out of the ATM and so on. What is going to happen when the new collapse happens, which is coming very soon? We, talked to Jim Rogers and others that you were talking with down at Freedom Fest. Well, the guys are seeing, this massive collapse, because what's funny is it should have collapsed, first of all, in the first place in 1971, but they just continued to print, and of course they were able to ship US dollars overseas everywhere, to hide the big issue of the collapse of the US dollars. So what has happened is they have implemented other strategies, because they saw that in Greece and in other, like Cyprus, there's severe bank runs that happens, and then the banks basically almost goes bankrupt. And what they do is a bank holiday, and then they come out with capital controls, which is actually, when you look at it too, at an ATM you can only take out $400 per transaction and so on. So it's kind of a capital control. You have X amount of money that you're able to actually take out of your account. When you look at your deposit account, for example, there's different rules of how much money you can take out in one day. So that's capital controls that's actually there right now that we don't really think about on an everyday basis. But what if you had, let's say, $100,000 there and you wanted to pull that out? Well, you couldn't pull that out in a day, of course, because that, even with today's rules, that is not you're not able to do it. And of course, you'd be looked at as a terrorist if you tried to take any money out of the bank. There's been so many people, and you've had experiences, I've even had experiences where I've taken out the bigger amount of money out of the account, and there's so many other people that I talked to that had this. You've been looked at as a terrorist, where you're just a normal human being wanting to do economic activity and spend some money. It's utterly insane. But where these asset freezes came out of originally was the Financial Stability Board at the G20. And what they put together is, of course, what you see now in the European Union. What they came out with is the proposal for, freezing assets. So it's a G20 that, controls a lot of these activity, a lot of these legislation and policies. It's almost a part of, basically, of the United Nations, very close to being a part of the United Nations. It's just a financial...
And told what to do by the EC.
And everybody on a massive central scale goes together and put together, global policies for everybody to implement.
Well, this gets down to a really important point, though, John, because one of the ways that the government, the banking system really screws people, pushes them into debt and poverty, is one, manipulation of markets, two, of course, taxation, and three, inflation. And when people are, extorted on a daily basis, they put money into certain assets, they can largely hide, or not hide, but keep safe their hard-earned money that they've worked so hard for. I know we talked with Robert Kiyosaki not that long ago, and he's putting all of his eggs into assets, because assets are something that you can actually keep safe from extortion of the state. And now on top of that, they're trying to push bail-in regimes and different throughout the banking system. They're stopping people from being able to run on the banks because, as I mentioned at the beginning, if your money's in the bank, it's not yours, it's the bank's. And people can't, banks risk everything, and they could lose your money, and then they have to pay off debts by stealing the remaining money in people's the depositors' bank accounts. But on top of that, Donald Trump, around the beginning of his administration, said this.
Okay, so you're saying the asset taking you used to do, and it had an impact, right? And you're not allowed to do it now?
No, they have curtailed it a little bit, and I'm sure the folks are.
And that's for legal reasons, or just political reasons?
They make it political, and they make it. They make up stories.
I'd like to look into that. Okay. There's no reason for that. Okay.
We've just been given. There's been a lot of pressure not to forfeit in some cases.
Who would want that pressure, other than like bad people, right? But who would want that pressure? You would think they'd want this stuff taken away.
You have to be careful how you speak, I guess, but a lot of pressure's coming out of was coming out of Congress. I don't know if that'll continue now or not.
I think less so. I think Congress is going to get beat up really badly by the voters because they've let this happen. And I think badly. I think you'll be back in shape. So asset forfeiture, we're going to go back on, okay?
Thank you, sir.
I mean, how simple can anything be? You all agree with that, I assume, right?
Absolutely.
Do you even understand the other side of it?
No.
It's like some things,
No sense.
sort of like the Iran deal. Nobody even understands how a thing like that could have happened.
So as you can see, Donald Trump is taking a line out of, the playbook of people like FDR. The civil asset forfeiture is quite insane if you consider what it actually means, when it means that people who have, say, Bitcoin that get arrested for victimless crime, the government just seizes their Bitcoin. A good example is Ross Ulbricht, who I just interviewed his mother down in Vegas a few days ago, and her son, all of his Bitcoin was seized because he created the Silk Road, a platform where people can just freely exchange goods for services, etc., etc. And yes, there were some pretty bad things that happened within the platform, but that's like blaming Alexander Graham Bell for people committing crimes over the phone. So anyway, the point is he's in jail for the rest of his life for this insane thing, and they stole his Bitcoin, which is now worth just unthinkable millions, I believe hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah. And now, as of, I believe, about a week ago, not even a week ago, the Attorney General Jeff Sessions in the United States has declared that basically the United States federal government and the Department of Justice will have say over the states. So there's many states that don't allow civil asset forfeiture, and now the federal government can supersede that and basically say, well, I don't care what you guys say as a state, we are going to seize assets. In our investigations, in our prosecutions, we're going to seize people's assets, which is very dangerous because then it's blanketly covering, there's really bad guys out there, there's terrorists, all that kind of stuff, but that's like a minuscule, small, microscopic percentage compared to the vast amount of people who are, say, arrested for smoking pot, people who are arrested for maybe not paying as much tax as the government wants them to pay, etc. And then they steal their assets and then hold on to them, and then the government owns it because in most cases I find, people don't actually get their Bitcoin back. People don't get their assets back.
I never got them when they seized my Bitcoin, like back in the day. They seized it because they looked at it as a criminal activity of the people that were doing it, and never seen that Bitcoin ever back again, which is quite sad because it was 8 Bitcoins. Like, look at it where it would have been today.
Well, yeah, but the point is, I mean, this is just another example of government interference in the individual private lives of free people, so-called free people. This freedom is intrinsic within us when we're born, but the government takes it away from us. They can't give it back. They steal it from us, and then we are forced into this extortion racket where we're stolen from on a daily basis, extorted through taxation, inflation, debt, poverty, via the hand of the central government, centralized government, and central banking system. And then on top of that, we try to, save for our future and be responsible for our own wealth, ensure our wealth, provide for our future family, our children, our grandkids. And then the government takes that away from us because we're seen as terrorists for trying to be responsible for our own wealth. I mean, this is absolutely insane and needs to be called out.
Well, and it's heavily misused. There's so many assets. I was listening to some statistics, like the civil asset forfeitures had just like blown through the roof in amounts. And it goes from this poor old lady, there's a story about her driving with a whole bunch of money that she was going to buy something with, and of course they took all that money, but she was wealthy enough to sue them. That's the problem. A lot of these people that have been taken from these cash, for example, that they've been carrying around, well, they are not in a position to actually sue. They're too poor, and there you go. They just literally steal it from you, which they shouldn't have done in the first place, and then you can't even get back and get your money back. It actually costs you more money to then sue them in order to get that money that they stole back from them.
Well, from the people that are saying that Trump is shrinking the size and scope of government, they may be right to a certain extent with certain issues, but that should be left to those certain issues. Yes, he's shrinking the size and scope of the government, but he's still growing it in other ways. So the civil asset forfeiture, for example, is an example of him taking basically the agenda right out of the globalist playbook at the EU and other places, the United Nations, etc., where we're talking about stealing people's hard-earned assets, where they put money into something and they've tried to save their own wealth and ensure their wealth against a very volatile and terrible and centrally planned system, and away from getting extorted from the government. So in that way, he's growing the size and scope of the government. When I first saw the video of him going, oh yeah, well, the video I showed you earlier, we'll get right on that. We'll make that happen. That's so bad that, we're not seizing people's assets. That's just so terrible. I mean, this is a very leftist ideal, but in the end, it's part of that collectivist spectrum, which we talk about so often, where it just goes around in a circle and one end meets the other.
Well, what would Trump have said if there was a committed crime on one of his properties?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Trump has a whole bunch of assets, and smart of him to get these assets. Imagine if the government said, hey, you're making too much money, we're going to take your assets and steal the money for ourselves.
There was a crime scene. So this has happened before, where they actually seized some people's houses because their kid was dealing drugs, and they didn't know about it, and they took the parents' house. Yeah. So, well, yeah, it would have been the same thing if somebody stayed at the Trump hotel and did some criminal activity there. Well, now they could suddenly, actually, by law, seize. Yeah, it's insane.
It's shady, and it's not as expected to happen at that extent within like something like Trump Tower, but it can still happen, and that's the point.
It's just
they have that leeway, and that's wrong. And the government shouldn't have that kind of leeway. The government shouldn't be able to extort people, and the government shouldn't be able to seize people's assets. That's just another way of them trying to control people, them trying to push people into debt and poverty, and them trying to basically steal people's goods and services for themselves. So many people on the left will say, well, the capitalists are so greedy. No, capitalists are just trading goods for services, consenting on both sides. That's not greed. What is greed is stealing people's assets, stealing people's money, stealing people's wealth insurance for themselves, or distributing it among a whole bunch of people who didn't work at the equal rate of the person who got it. So, I mean, this is really messed up, and I think that it's just another sign of how far gone, especially people that call themselves conservatives are, when they are openly advocating this, because, now everything that Trump does is right, but if Obama did it, rightly so, they'd be pissed off, and now suddenly it doesn't matter. It's just that dichotomy, that switch from the left to the right to the left to the right, where people just advocate everything
as long as it's their guy. Leader. That's the thing. Like we always like to follow a leader, and we believe that leader is going to get us out of everything. Like we see currently today, like a lot of the Trump people. They would say, oh, he's going to save the economy. He's not going to save the economy.
He can't.
No, he can't. It's impossible for him. He's going to have to, he has some knowledge about bankruptcy, so he's going to probably be able to pull the United States through a bankruptcy.
Yeah, but when it comes to the economy, the monetary system, he has no effect on it because it's a long time. It's 100 years in the making, especially over the last 45
It's
years.
historically impossible to fix the monetary system, guys.
Anyway, as per usual, we're starting to stray off course, but I mean, that's where the passion comes from because this is just so insane and it continues to elapse and it's part of a much greater agenda. And we go over all those things on our channel, of course, all the time. But leaving it off, just be responsible for your own wealth. Take care of yourself. Take care of your friends and your family at a voluntary scale where you can actually ensure your wealth, etc. Get into assets. Don't invest long term on the stock market, as Robert Kiyosaki will say. Just take care of yourself and let's try and call out the hand of the state when they are extorting people to the scale. And now with the EU getting involved, the US government's getting involved in this, it's asset freeze, the asset forfeiture. This is just building up and up and up, and it's about time that people shout from the rooftops, we're not going to take it anymore.
Yeah, get your financial education in place right now because things are happening, guys. And with these asset freezes, if you had your money in a fund or whatever it was, well, that money is suddenly not available, and then of course they're going to use it as in a bail-in because they don't want you to pull that money out. So it's very, very, very dangerous times right now. So you need to get your education in place on your financial side and then take action.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for going into this with us, John, and until next time, check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored by YouTube. Also, check our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also, check me out at Josh Sigurdson. Check John out at The Economic Truth at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in cryptocurrency to blog and post via the demand of your post and other people's upvote. It's the future of social media, and it's taking over the dinosaur social medias. And of course, you can't forget John's new book is up on Amazon. Canada, the greatest economy in the world, ? You should check this out because this is really breaking down the basics that we need to know about the monetary system, not just in Canada, but the rest of the world.
Oh, and I talk about what we talked about in the video in the book as well.
Absolutely. It's very important information. Get your hands on a copy of this book. You can find it at Amazon. We'll leave the link below. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.